Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into Haruki Murakami's latest, The City and Its Uncertain Walls.
A bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. But, the title itself already hints at some of those classic Murakami themes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like isolation, ambiguity.
Shifting reality.
Exactly. And this one's causing quite a stir.
It really is. I mean, come on, it's Murakami. You'd think by now people would know what to expect, but...
But that's the thing about Murakami, isn't it?
Yeah.
He always manages to keep us guessing.
Right. So we've been poring over a ton of reviews, articles, even some lively social media threads to really get a feel for this book.
Yeah, I gotta love those passionate Murakami fans.
Oh, yeah. But it seems like even they're divided on this one. Some are calling it a masterpiece. Others are saying it's a rehash of his old stuff.
Well, there's definitely a lot of discussion about that. Some critics are pointing out how he's revisited this story before.
Yeah, wasn't it originally a novella way back when?
That's right, back in 1980. And then he incorporated parts of it into Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World in 85.
And now, 40 years later, he gives us this whole new novel based on the same idea. I mean, what's so special about this story that he keeps coming back to it?
Well, in the afterword, he actually says that he needed those 40 years to really develop the skills to tell it properly.
Wow. That's a pretty powerful statement.
It is. It suggests this story has been kind of haunting him all this time.
I was reading the New York Times review, and they use this phrase, late style, to describe it.
Oh, interesting. What do they mean by that?
Well, they were talking about how Murakami's revisiting these familiar themes and characters, and they kind of pose this question, is it creative evolution or stagnation?
So is this the culmination of his career, or is he just running out of ideas?
Right. And there's no easy answer, is there? I mean, we've got The Guardian straight up calling it bad magical realism. They even compared it to The Alchemist, which...
Ouch. That's got to sting a bit.
And then you've got The Telegraph giving it 5 stars. They're praising the depth of the recurring motifs and even connecting it to historical events like Fukushima.
Yeah, it's a wild mix of opinions. But before we get too lost in the critical debate, let's talk about what we actually know about the story.
Yeah, give us the rundown.
Okay, so it centers around this unnamed narrator who, as a teenager, falls for this mysterious girl.
Classic Murakami right there.
Right. And she claims that her true self lives in a walled town. But then, of course, she disappears,
Of course.
leaving the narrator obsessed with finding her even decades later, which I have to say some reviewers found a bit creepy.
The ick factor, as they called it.
Exactly. Is it enduring love or unhealthy attachment?
Big questions, especially since we know he's exploring themes of memory and reality versus fantasy, just like in Hard-Boiled Wonderland.
Right, and that's where this walled town comes in. It's this recurring image that seems to be key to understand the whole thing.
Okay, so what's the deal with this walled town? Paint us a picture.
Well, imagine a place with no shadows. Unicorns roaming free.
Unicorns.
Unicorns. Time stands still. There's a library, but instead of books, it's filled with dreams.
Okay, now this is where it gets weird. Dreams. Like actual dreams.
Yeah, old dreams shaped like eggs. And the narrator's job is to be a dream reader, absorbing the emotions contained within them.
Okay, hold on. Egg-shaped dreams. Dream reader. I'm already hooked.
Oh, it gets weirder. To enter the town, you have to give up your shadow.
So what happens to your shadow?
It becomes a separate entity, slowly fading away. It's this really eerie image of a part of yourself literally disappearing.
That's deep, man. But why would anyone give up their shadow? What's the point of this walled town?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And is it even a real place? Or is it some kind of metaphor?
That's what we're here to figure out. It's a good question. And it's one Murakami seems to be grappling with himself. In the afterword, he actually mentions how the pandemic, all that isolation and lockdown, might have influenced the book.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that. But yeah, that makes sense. Suddenly, this walled town, this place cut off from the world, it feels a lot more real,
Exactly. It taps into that feeling of uncertainty, disconnection, something I think we all experienced during that time.
Totally. But what about that whole shadow thing? That's got to be symbolic, right?
Right. It's a powerful image. Makes me think of liminal spaces.
Liminal spaces?
Yeah, it's like a threshold, a place of transition between one state of being and another.
So the walled town is like a gateway.
In a way, yeah. Between past and present, reality and fantasy, maybe even between the self we show the world and the self we keep hidden.
Oh, interesting. So by leaving our shadows behind, we're leaving behind those parts of ourselves we don't want to face.
Maybe. And then there's the whole dream reader thing, absorbing emotions from those egg-shaped dreams. What if that's about processing those hidden memories, bringing
Wow.
them to the surface?
Whoa, okay, so this isn't just Murakami rehashing old themes. It's like he's taking them to a whole new level.
Right. It's not just about searching for this lost love. It's about how the past shapes us, even when we try to move on.
And maybe that's why some critics are frustrated. Murakami doesn't give us easy answers, he makes us work for it.
Exactly. He's not spoon-feeding us the meaning. He creates these spaces, these worlds, and then lets us wander through them, draw our own conclusions.
It's not like he's saying, here's the puzzle, now figure it out.
Exactly. Some people might want a clear resolution, a neat ending. But I think that ambiguity, that's part of what makes Murakami so fascinating.
Makes you think, for sure. But okay, we keep coming back to this critical divide. Some are calling it profound, others derivative. What's your take?
Well, I think you got to look at the bigger picture. Murakami's been criticized for being repetitive before.
Right.
Those same themes, the same types of characters.
Yeah, like the lonely guy, the mysterious woman, the whole reality bending thing. We've seen it before.
Right. But the question is the city just more of the same? Or is he doing something different this time?
Right, right. Because the Telegraph, they said this book's like those greatest books that just pull you into their world completely.
Interesting. Maybe for some readers, it's not that the book is bad. It's that they're coming to it with certain expectations based on his older work. They want him to change, but he's not.
So maybe the key is to approach this as like a new chapter, not just a repeat of the same old story.
I think so. He's building on what he's done before, refining his themes, exploring them on a deeper level. And you got to remember, this is a story that's been with him for 40 years.
Yeah.
He wouldn't come back to it if it wasn't important to him.
Yeah, it's like he had to work through all that, live life, before he could really tell it the way he wanted to. And now he's inviting us along for the ride.
Exactly. It's about facing those shadows, those
Ah.
uncertainties, and seeing what we can learn from them. But, we've talked a lot about the critics. What about the fans?
Yeah. Social media's been buzzing, and that comment about Murakami writing for a Japanese audience, that really got me thinking.
Me too. It reminds us that we can't just impose our own cultural lens on this book. There might be things we're missing, nuances that don't translate.
So are Western critics judging him unfairly, expecting him to follow rules that don't apply to him?
Possibly. It's like trying to analyze a haiku using the rules for a sonnet. Doesn't quite work, does it?
Totally different forms, different cultures, so yeah, maybe some of the criticism is off base.
It's a tough question. How do we critique a work from a different culture without, you know, imposing our own biases? It's a balancing act.
It is. So to really get the city, we need to try and see it from Murakami's perspective.
Uh-huh.
Step outside our own comfort zones.
I think that's a good starting point. Literature's all about exploring different worlds, different ways of thinking. It challenges us, expands our understanding.
It's about opening our minds, right? And even if we don't agree with everything, the conversation itself, that's valuable.
Exactly. Sharing perspectives, considering different interpretations, that's what makes it all so rich.
So where does this leave our listener? What should they take away from all of this?
Well, The City and Its Uncertain Walls, it's not a book that gives you all the answers. It's a book that makes you think, makes you feel, and leaves you with more questions than you started with.
It's not about finding neat solutions. It's about embracing the mystery, the ambiguity.
And being willing to sit with that discomfort.
It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but for those who are ready to dive in, to explore those uncertain spaces, it could be a powerful experience.
One that stays with you long after you finish the book.
You know, it's funny though, even with all this talk about Murakami repeating himself, some fans are like, hey, he's earned the right, he can write whatever he wants.
Yeah, I get that. He's got a
Okay.
style and people love him for it. There's something comforting about knowing what to expect, you know?
Totally. And even if the city isn't like groundbreaking, it's still Murakami. You can't deny he knows how to create a world that just sucks you in.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
He's a master of atmosphere. Remember those coffee shop scenes? You could practically smell the coffee and hear the jazz.
Ugh, yes. It's like you're right there with the characters. And that's what makes Murakami so unique. It's not just reading a story, it's like stepping into a whole other reality.
A reality where cats talk and wells lead to other dimensions and your shadow decides to up and leave you.
Exactly. And even if some of that stuff feels familiar, there's still this sense of wonder, this blurring of lines that keeps me coming back.
It makes you question everything.
Yeah.
Like maybe the world is a lot weirder than we think it is.
I love that. So after all this discussion about the reviews and the themes and the critical response, what really stands out to you about this book?
You know what gets me is that this story stayed with Murakami for 40 years. He just couldn't let it go. It makes me think about the stories we all carry around, the ones that keep coming back.
That's a beautiful thought. It's like rewriting is a way of making peace with the past,
Right.
integrating those stories into who we are now.
Yeah, I think so. And it just shows how powerful storytelling is. It helps us understand ourselves, our experiences, the things that make us who we are.
Absolutely. Okay, so
Hmm.
one reviewer said that reading Murakami is like stepping into a fantastical dimension.
Oh, I love that.
So if you could step into any Murakami novel, which one would it be?
Hmm. That's a tough one. But I think I'd go with Kafka on the Shore. That whole surreal, dreamlike quality, the mix of myth and reality, it just pulls you in.
Great choice. For me, it's the Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. It's this huge, complex novel, but the way he connects everything, the characters, the events, it's just brilliant.
They're both fantastic. And no matter what your favorite is, you can't deny that Murakami is a one-of-a-kind voice in literature. He's inspired so many writers and readers to embrace the strange and the unknown.
And the city and its uncertain walls, even if it's not his most innovative work, it shows us that he's still got it. He can still make us think, make us feel, and leave us wanting more.
So if you're looking for a book that will stay with you, a book that will challenge your perceptions and make you question everything, I highly recommend checking out The City.
And if it's not your cup of tea, there's a whole world of Murakami out there waiting to be discovered. Talking cats, disappearing women, and stories that just won't let you go. Happy reading, everyone.